Hey, folks, Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast live stream. I think it's been almost overlooked, surprise, surprise, in the mainstream media over the past few days, just how monumental Israel's complete demolition of Syria's military has been. Folks, this harkens back to the Six-Day War in 1967, when Israel essentially won that war in the opening hours when the Israeli Air Force destroyed Egypt's Air Force while it was still on the ground in Egypt and the pilots were sitting around having coffee and getting ready for the day. The Six-Day War was won when that happened. And man, this was reminiscent. Look, some 500 now, they're saying, strikes, or sources in the region are saying, I should say, against Syrian military targets, and just stunning devastation. So wise of Israel to preemptively strike before jihadi rebels, quote unquote, jihadists, could get their hands on any sort of advanced military hardware in Syria. I said the other day, and I'll say it again today, what a stark contrast from August 2021, when the Biden administration withdrew disastrously from Afghanistan and left behind tons of advanced U.S. military hardware that the Taliban was able to seize and use. So Israel certainly did not repeat that insane mistake. And it did the right thing. They jumped into action almost simultaneously. Look, Assad fell on Saturday, December 7th. He fled to Russia for exile, to be in exile and live in asylum there. And Israel, not even 24 hours later, went into action. They said, wait a minute. We've got the devil we do know, Assad. Now he's gone. Now we have the devil we don't know, the jihadi rebels. But the devil we don't know certainly has quite a reputation and a track record, meaning HTS, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, the main jihadi group, came out of al-Qaeda. And a leader of HTS, we'll call him HTS for short, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, the leader of HTS, Mohammed al-Golani, he's now driving around in Damascus wearing suits and trying to recast himself as some moderate, pluralistic leader. But folks, two things. Number one, he belonged to the al-Qaeda-linked al-Nusra Front in Syria. He also belonged for a time to ISIS, and there's a $10 million bounty on his head, courtesy of the U.S. government, for his previous terrorist activities. I say all that to say Israel made a very smart move to send hundreds of Israeli fighter jets over the skies of Syria to take out chemical weapon stockpiles that once belonged to Bashar al-Assad, his entire naval fleet, his entire Air Force. And look, I know we'll get some comments here. Well, his fleet, his Air Force, it was outdated. I get it, 100%. But it could still do some damage. And in particular, against Syrians. There was a very good chance these jihadis could have used that military hardware to attack Christians in Syria, Kurds, Druze, moderate Arabs there. So Israel did itself a favor, Syria a favor, and the world a favor by demolishing Bashar al-Assad's military. And here's some of the numbers for you. Great piece here in the Jerusalem Post. The headline says it all, folks. IDF attacks have permanently changed the face of the Syrian military threat. 90% of advanced anti-aircraft missiles were destroyed. Wow. And aircraft squadrons were destroyed. And again, this was a 48 to 72 hour span that the Israel Defense Forces carried out all of these actions earlier this week, from Sunday roughly through Tuesday. Why is this not the screaming headline in the mainstream media? And remember, Israel's been officially in a state of war with Syria for decades, dating back to the Six-Day War. There's never been any sort of renunciation of that on both sides. They're officially in a state of war. And any war that was still being waged, Israel pretty much decisively won. The Assad regime is really dead and buried now. Their military, which, look, Iran poured billions into Syria over the years, a military that Iran and Russia helped to prop up, has now been obliterated by the Israel Defense Forces. This has got massive ramifications. That's why I'm saying why. Wow, why aren't more people talking about this? I get it. It's the holidays. I get it. President Trump, a lot happening there. He's taking office, thank God, on January 20th. But big story here with global ramifications, I believe. The Israeli, here's more from the Jerusalem Post. I'm just looking down, reading this straight from my phone for you. The Israeli Air Force's more than 500 attacks on Syria's military assets in a 48-hour period this week have permanently and radically altered the threat that any future Syrian regime can pose to the state of Israel, the IDF said today. And there are reports that 80% of the Syrian army's military capabilities, Syrian army, navy, have been destroyed. I mean, this is stunning. There's not much left for the jihadis to use, but what is left, the concern is that Hezbollah will come in and try to pick up the scraps of anything that is left, the 20% of Assad's military hardware that is left. So now there'll be a fight over that, apparently. And Hezbollah right now is the weak horse, needless to say. So I don't know how they're going to get it out of Syria. Any kind of hardware that is still left undamaged. But I think they'll have a fight on their hands with the Sunni jihadis if they try that. But here's more. This means what the IDF just did, that in the worst case scenario, if Syria's new rulers, the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, decide to be hostile to Israel, they will not be able to immediately threaten the Jewish state with anywhere near the kind of advanced and long-range weaponry which the Assad regime wielded. Unveiling a slew of staggering statistics, again, the IDF noted that over 90% of Syria's advanced anti-aircraft missiles were destroyed. Remember that? We're going to come back to that in a minute. It has huge ramifications for Iran's nuclear program. I'll explain why in a minute. In total, about 85% of Syria's air defenses were destroyed. I mean, this is massive, just massive, ladies and gentlemen. 100% of Syrian explosive drones were destroyed, and 390 significant Syrian firepower targets were all destroyed by the Israeli Air Force. Quote, the Israeli Air Force, key takeaway here, folks, now has a stunning air superiority in Syrian airspace, which it could never have dreamed of as long as the Assad regime was intact. It has now destroyed essentially all of Syria's radar capabilities. And a side note here, remember that so-called deconfliction mechanism that Israel had with Russia. Look, Israel has carried out hundreds of airstrikes in Syria since 2011, since the civil war broke out. Once Russia came in 2015 and planted itself in Syria, Israel and Russia came to this understanding where if Israel was going to carry out airstrikes in a sensitive place near Russian soldiers or Russian assets, Israel would give Russia fair warning and a heads up. You don't need to do that now because Russia's out of there essentially. Now, mind you, something interesting that's going to play out, and I just read a report, I glanced at it right before I came on air with you, from our good friend Jonathan Shanzer at the FDD in DC, that apparently Russia is coming to an agreement with the jihadi rebels about the 2 Russian bases on Syria's Mediterranean coast. There's a military base there and a Russian naval base, a warm water port in the Mediterranean. How does that play out? After Russia let Assad fall, look, they said he's done. We're distracted by Ukraine. We just don't have the assets to bail him out again. Iran and Hezbollah made the same calculation after they were smashed by Israel over the past few months. They're all weakened. And the jihadi rebels saw it. They made their move. They took advantage. IDF sources, more from the Jerusalem Post here, IDF sources said that the Syrians still have no idea what they have lost in terms of potential threats to Israel. And it could take a while for them to decipher what exactly is even left. In a broader sense, the IDF says it has destroyed around 80% of Syria's larger scale firepower. Wow. A number of underground Syrian military targets were struck as well. So think about this. I mean, as Moscow, and here's a little bit more on that, those bases I just mentioned. Here you go. Some observers have said, who knows who they are, but some observers have said that Moscow may try to renegotiate its presence in Syria under very different conditions, such that HTS would have real control of all the territory, and Russia would truly only serve as a guest helper if and when needed, but which enables them to retain a Russian foothold there. That is something to watch, folks. Is HTS going to try to completely expel Russia from Syria? I don't know that that'll go down too well with Russia and Vladimir Putin. So that's something to watch. I mean, in the meantime, the IDF has destroyed at least 70% of Hezbollah's long-range and strategic weapons. What we have right now is a new Middle East. And you might say, what are you talking about? There's war in Syria. I get it. And look, the dust hasn't nearly settled there. I fear there will be more bloodshed in Syria as these jihadis look to consolidate their power. And as I mentioned, Mohammed al-Golani is saying all the right things now. He's a moderate. But jihadi leopards don't usually change their spots. And jihadis don't usually moderate when they get power. So you do the math. But you've got the Kurds there in the northeast of Syria. You've got Christians, Druze. You've got rebel groups to the south who aren't jihadis, but they're anti-Assad and the rebel groups, genuine rebel groups. Then you've got the jihadis with Turkish backing, key point there. So this could get a lot more complicated before it gets easier. Let's just say that. And Russia right now, I mean, what a stunning turn of events. I said it's a new Middle East. Think about this. And while you're mulling it over, a reminder to subscribe to the Watchman News channel right here on YouTube and click the notification bell so you get alerts every time a new video is posted. Hey, as you can tell, things are happening at such a fast and furious clip in the world's most chaotic and volatile region that you need to keep it right here to get all the updates. And be sure to click the notification bell again, because we're coming to you. Last weekend, we were here on a Sunday. We came to you live. Sometimes a Saturday. It depends on the news cycle, which is pretty busy in the Middle East. Needless to say, we like to say the Middle East never sleeps. So make sure to subscribe for such a time as this. It's breaking news, current events, mainly from the Middle East, but a little bit of everything. And from an unapologetically biblical perspective, we would love your support here on the channel. But a new Middle East, how so, you may say? And by the way, it's about the fourth time in the past 14 years that we could say we've got a new Middle East. Hey, think about it. I'm talking about prophetic times, Bible times, and prophetic chess pieces moving on the board. They don't stop moving in the Middle East. December 2010, 14 years ago, the so-called Arab Spring breaks out in Tunisia. It soon devolves into an Islamist winter. But we see regimes changed. We see 2 regime changes in the span of 2-3 years in Egypt alone. And then we see Assad, the civil war in Syria began. So that's the Islamist winter. And then ISIS, 2013, 2014, roars out of Iraq, Syria, forms this caliphate, 58,000 square miles of territory. And then the Iranian axis forms. ISIS is smashed. Donald Trump kept his word. And then 2017, 2018, the Iranian axis gathers steam. The ring of fire around Israel goes into overdrive. A third new look. And then October 7th. And the aftermath of October 7th. Again, all this in 14 years. That's enough history and enough real-time breaking events to last a region a century. Well, I can tell you this century so far, the 21st, has been very eventful in the Middle East, needless to say. But the new Middle East now, well, here's how fast it happened. And we talked about this on the live stream the other day, but it warrants repeating real quick. On September 17th, the Iranian regime and its proxies woke up feeling pretty good about themselves. I mean, look, it was a harsh blow to lose Gaza. And by September, it was very clear Hamas was smashed. But Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad, Iran's 2 proxies in Gaza, the Gaza ring on the ring of fire that surrounds Israel on all sides, that Iran spent decades building up, Gaza was off the board. Tough loss, but Iran is saying, you know what? Okay, very tough loss, because Gaza was a thorn in Israel's side. Every time Iran wanted to tweak Israel, they could just activate Hamas and Islamic Jihad. Hey, guys, launch a few thousand rockets, kill some Israeli civilians, and start a week-long conflict with Israel. This is pre-October 7th. Gaza lost, but Iran said, okay, you know what? We still got Hezbollah, our crown jewel. 150,000 rockets and missiles pointed at every inch of Israel, tens of thousands of well-trained foot soldiers, a terror tunnel network along the Israel-Lebanon border, plans to carry out an October 7 style invasion of northern Israel. And remember, for a year, literally for almost a year, Hezbollah unilaterally and without provocation began launching these attacks against Israel on October 8th, 2023. And it was tit for tat for the better part of a year. Israel dealt some heavy blows to Hezbollah, but didn't go all in. They held back. And Hezbollah every day, it was on a daily clip, rockets, missiles, drones at northern Israel. And this hasn't changed yet, but hopefully it does soon. Some 70,000 at least Israelis evacuated from their homes in northern Israel. Insanity. And Hezbollah was crowing about this, and Iran, and they said essentially, we control northern Israel now. It was not a good situation, needless to say. Israel did not want to fight a war on two fronts, and the Biden administration was weeping and howling and gnashing its teeth and trying to restrain Israel from attacking Hezbollah. Guess what? On September 17th, 2024, Israel said, enough is enough. Israel carried out Operation Exploding Pager. And the after effect, well, Benjamin Netanyahu talked about today. Let's quote directly. And this is interesting. For, I think, the fourth time, Prime Minister Netanyahu today released a video with Persian subtitles, Farsi, directly addressing the Iranian people. I'll let him break down where we're at right now and where Iran is and why it's a new Middle East. Netanyahu says the Iranian axis is crumbling due to a chain reaction set off by Israel, and he expressed his hope that Iran can finally be free. Wouldn't we love that from this wicked, tyrannical regime? The biggest victims of this regime are the Iranian people. Speaking in English with Persian subtitles, Netanyahu pointed out that Iran's leaders have spent over $30 billion supporting Assad in Syria, and then his regime, quote, collapsed into dust. That's what Bibi said. He said to the Iranian people, your oppressors spent billions supporting Hamas in Gaza. Today, Hamas lies in ruins. Your oppressors, the Iranian regime, spent over $20 billion supporting Hezbollah in Lebanon. Bibi said in a matter of weeks, most of Hezbollah's leaders, its rockets, and thousands of its terrorists went up in smoke. And this was the third time, actually, that Bibi addressed the Iranian people directly. I love it. And look, there's ancient links there between modern-day Iran, which is ancient Persia. Look, Bible land, right? Mordecai, Esther, Darius, Cyrus from your Bible. That was modern-day Iran. That's ancient Persia. Ancient links with the Jewish people and the land of Israel. But what we have is the unraveling of the Iranian Ring of Fire before your very eyes in stunning fashion. And because Hezbollah was smashed and Hamas was smashed and Iran was severely weakened, remember, on October 26th, Israel destroyed Iran's air defense systems. Because of that, Assad fell. The jihadis saw a golden opportunity. They took advantage. They moved in, and now Assad's gone. So there's a window of opportunity here for a few things. Number one, to further weaken the Iranian axis and just beat it into submission. That's a good thing. Number two, the Abraham Accords back on the table in a big way when Donald Trump takes office in 39 days. Peace agreements between Israel and Sunni Arab neighbors. On the downside, there's a big window of opportunity here, it seems, for Turkey and the radical regime of Recep Tayyip Erdogan, a NATO member nation, but under Erdogan's radical rule, you know what we've called them, NINO, NATO in name only. and he boasts the second largest military in NATO. That's a troubling consideration. But what does Turkey do here? I mean, they have caliphate dreams, and they're backing these jihadis in Syria. But in the meantime, the big golden opportunity, I think, in just dealing death blows to the Iranian regime, and in the process giving new life to the Iranian people, who are the main victims of this wicked regime of ayatollahs who've been in charge with an iron fist for 45 years, the nuclear program of Iran. Do not discount, folks, the importance of taking out Syria's air defense systems, because now Israeli fighter jets can fly across Syria freely and not be worried about getting shot down on their way to Iran. And guess what? Once they get to Iran, they don't need to worry about being shot down there either, because they destroyed, Israel did, Iran's air defense systems, some of them Russian-made, by the way, just as the Syrian air defenses were. I'm sure Russia is none too happy about this. Talk about prophetic implications. So the Syria knockout blow that was dealt this week has profound implications for a knockout blow against Iran's nuclear facilities. Israeli officials said today they continue to train for a strike against Iran's nuclear weapon sites. And again, I said earlier, I'll say it again, you do the math. You can see the way the winds are blowing here, and it ain't good for the Iranian regime. Weakened, nuclear program exposed, and oh yeah, Donald Trump's taking office on January 20th and will resume his maximum pressure campaign against the Iranian regime. So I think you've got a few options here. I think 2025 is going to be the year of reckoning for Iran's nuclear program. Here's the potential options. Number one, Israel strikes, either alone or with help, or at least tacit support from the Trump administration. Israel strikes militarily Iran's nuclear sites. Free lane now. Number two, Iran tries to break out. They announce we've got the bomb. They follow the North Korean model. Kim Jong-un said he had the bomb, and now he's got at least 20 or 30, and no one messes with Kim Jong-un. Let's follow the North Korean example. That's a second option. A third option, and do not discount this, the Iranian regime has no leverage right now. Their backs are against the wall. Their proxies have been smashed. Their air defenses have been smashed. Syria off the table. They can talk a big game, as they always do, but they're weak. Iran's leadership is weak. Ayatollah Khamenei is literally weak. He's 85 years old, and persistent reports that he's in poor health. Could Iran now come to the table and beg for a new nuclear deal, but one unlike what it begged for with, not begged for, the Biden administration begged for the deal with Iran. That was the other way around, as Obama did as well. But those terms were severely unfriendly to the United States, to Israel, and to the free world. Is Iran forced to take a deal completely one-sided in favor of the United States and the free world? And we'll let your regime survive if you agree to this deal. What that deal would entail, I have no idea. Donald Trump sees himself as the deal maker, I can tell you that. But to me, not an attractive option for this regime to remain in power in Tehran. But right now, look, they're teetering on the brink. And you think the Iranian people aren't watching what unfolded in Syria over the weekend? You better bet they are. The Iranian people rose up time and time again over the past 25 years. Since 1999, uprisings really intensified there. 2009, we had 1 million Iranians in the streets, the Green Revolution. Barack Obama, it was a Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall moment. It was a Ayatollah Khamenei, tear down this wall moment. And Obama backed up and said, we don't want to meddle. We don't want to be seen as meddling. Very productive. All the Iranian people needed were some words of encouragement and affirmation, not U.S. boots on the ground. Think of what Reagan did during the Cold War, how that galvanized the countries behind the Iron Curtain, and the wall eventually fell and the Soviet Union eventually collapsed. Peace through strength. A golden opportunity missed there in June 2009 with that Iranian revolution. But Iran's in such a weakened state right now, they may be begging for any sort of deal just to stay alive and stay in power. So we'll see. That's a possibility as well. But that's all on the table right now. And we are traveling in some very historic times in the world and in the Middle East. I think Israel may have a reprieve. We'll see what happens in Syria. But no matter what happens there, the fact that 80% of the Syrian military capabilities have been taken out makes you rest a little easier at night if you're Israel. No matter what these jihadis do, who've taken power in Syria, no matter what their posture is towards you, if you're Israel, you're saying, okay, they're going to be hostile. That ain't good right on our border, but at least they don't have a Navy and Air Force and chemical weapons. So again, very wise move by Israel earlier this week. A wild card here, Turkey again. Does Turkey just straight out occupy Syria? And do we have Turkish soldiers at Israel's doorstep? That's also not beyond the realm of possibility. And Erdogan is, to say he's hostile to Israel is an understatement. Bible prophecy before your very eyes, the chess piece is moving on the board. Keep it in prayer. And hey, by the way, we have the YouTube channel here, of course, but we also have, remember, our nightly show on TBN. Just launched in March, about 8.5 months ago, and things are going great. It's called Stakelbeck Tonight. TBN's the world's largest Christian television network, and we air every weeknight, Monday through Friday, at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, with a re-air at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And we're covering all these topics and much more with all the footage and the interviews and the bells and whistles that you'd love to have on a live stream, but not quite possible sometimes on a live stream. But you love the TV show. And also, we've got some great merch from the show, Stakelbeck Tonight merch. Hey, Christmas is here, Hanukkah's here. If you want to support the show and support everything we're doing here, including the YouTube channel, check out that Stack Tonight merch. We've got hoodies, hats, T-shirts, mugs, some cool stuff for this Christmas season. It's shop.tbn.org. That's shop.tbn.org. Check that out. Great gifts for your loved ones. And until tomorrow, keep it all in prayer. God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace. Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back.